Hey guys, it's Rob over at Lure Hobbies. I've got a really exciting one for you guys today. I'm starting a new video series where I ask questions that I get asked a lot to larger beekeeping operations. I'm curious how they do what they do, why they make some of the decisions that they make, including things like battery usage, how they charge their batteries per yard. Every commercial operation, it seems, has figured that out a different way. All the way down to just some general basics about their operation. Shedding some light on these topics educates me so that I can help educate others, as well as we might as well record it and share it with you all so you all can educate yourselves as well vicariously through YouTube. The first video in this series is from Ian Steppler. We chatted for about an hour, so it is a longer one. I do think that it is worth a watch all the way through. There were a lot of things that were packed in there that I wasn't really prepared for, and it's awesome. And Ian shares a lot of great information to help educate other beekeepers. So if you haven't seen him, definitely go check him out. I really appreciate him spending his time, and I really hope that you find value in what we talk about. Anyway, here it goes. Have a good one. Leave any comments and stuff down below.
So basically, I'm just going to kind of get into the questions here. So the first one that I have here is to explain your operation, things like the number of hives per out yard on average, box configuration such as pallets and that kind of thing, 10 frame hardware, etc., and other details such as climate and that kind of thing. Kind of a general overview of what you have going on.
Sure. Yeah, Rob, I can talk about that. So I'm a 1,500 hive beekeeper. We're primarily honey producers. We don't have any type of pollination opportunities here, so we're strictly honey producers. I run everything in a kind of a migratory 2 hive pallet configuration, and basically I do that just because I have an easy loader and it's easier to pick up 2 colonies than it is with 4. A lot of guys out here will run 4 ways, but I run 2. And my boxes, I run single brood boxes as a rule, and also my nukes, they're just 1 story, so I keep my nukes nice and tight. We have our pallets laid out with hive clips, so it's nice and tight. The tops, typically we have I call it foamies, but it's kind of like that. What do you call that bubble stuff? That bubble.
Yeah, it's got the shiny on both sides of it.
Yeah, that reflective, I guess what you call it. And I use that to seal the top, so I don't run any top entrance on my colonies. Basically, for the biggest reason is because I winter indoors. So I bring all my colonies inside for winter, stack them 6 to the ceiling, and keep the place about 4 degrees Celsius all winter. Yeah, so that's basically the configuration of my operation. So we target canola, alfalfa, sunflower, buckwheat if it's late in the season, something like that. In the spring, we manage our colonies and all the nectar coming in just to build the colonies. So we're building the colonies, we produce the honey, and then we focus on the winter nest. So our seasons are very well defined in that way as we move through. So our treatment periods are in the spring and in the fall. I do still rely primarily on Apivar, which is an Amatraz product. And I use Apivar in the spring. And then when I need to, I use it in the fall. It seems like we need to treat more often now. So I'm using the 2 products. I'm trying to switch different products in to help rotate. I'm thinking of Formic or maybe Thymol products in there. But at the end of the season, I finish off and I call it kind of my mop-up treatment. I use oxalic acid vapor, and I use a vaporizer, and I give my colonies 1 or 2 times through before we put them away in the shed. And we like to do it as late as we can in the fall, just to try to get them as broodless as possible so we can target those mites. So that's kind of like a little bit of a snapshot.
Sure. Just to piggyback on that real quick, when you say as late as you can in the season, I know up in Canada you run a lot colder than we do. Is there too cold of a temperature in your perspective for treating with OA?
I always find it's easier. I'm always doing little trials just to test the efficacy of the treatment as we work. And I find that when it's hard for us because we have so many colonies to go through, and especially if we want to go through 2 or 3 times with the treatment, we have to pretty much go every day just to get through everything in a week, and then get through everything in a week again. And before we drop the pin and bring them inside. So sometimes we don't get through them 3 times before we have to bring them in. So we're going, it seems to be best when the bees are just starting to fly. So the cluster is nice and loose. All the bees are back home and they're not too aggravated. And it seems like when we provide the vapor to the front of the nest, when the bees are just in that in between, either just about to fly, not fly, that vapor seems to go up into the cluster very effectively. And it does too when the bees are flying, but I don't know if it's best to have all the bees back home to be able to target all the bees with that treatment or not. When it gets colder, like 5 degrees and cooler, where the cluster is, you crack the top open, the bees are very slow and lethargic. We put vapor into the nest at that time. It almost seems like the vapor goes around the cluster more than it does go through it. So I find there's more consistency with mite drops in the sticky boards when that cluster is a little bit looser. So if it is cold in the spring, if it is cold in the morning, or if it's cold during the time we're treating, what I do is I tell the guys to kick the hives. So go kick, and then we
loosen them up a
the
little.
vaporizer.
Okay.
Yeah, just stir them up a little bit, just to open that cluster. And by the time you get back around to them, it seems like the vapor gets into the cluster a lot more effective.
Cool. Okay, that's basically what I've concluded, but I just wanted your take because you're in a much cooler climate than we have. I do get that question quite a lot.
We call it the kick test.
So you don't have any fear of them freezing or anything like that with them loosening in the cluster, or they basically just go back pretty quickly?
Yeah, there's a lot of bees in those boxes, so I have no thoughts, second thoughts. We're not doing it when it was below freezing, or we're not doing it when it's -10. So it's not really cold. It's just cool out. Yeah.
Okay. Just loosen them a little bit.
More of a cluster is probably, when they're cluster up, is probably not as effective. Well, not as effective. I don't know. It seems to be.
It just doesn't seem to penetrate the cluster enough. It just kind of treats the outer edge and not into the middle. From my experience,
and I think that's the inconsistency there. More consistency when the cluster is loose, for sure.
Yep. So awesome. So I'm going to step into some of the details, like what kind of units do you run for your vaporization? As you know, we sell oxalic acid vaporizers. So the units, the accessories, your batteries, kind of what that looks like for operation your size. First, if you can start off with the things that you run, and then we'll kind of dig into what that looks like out of the yard.
Okay, sure. I'll give you a history of what I used to do.
Sure.
When I first got introduced with oxalic acid vapor when I was running into troubles with Amatraz. And this was, how many years ago was this? Oh boy, might have even been 10 years ago. I was noticing that, actually I took a loss in a winter, and I think it was because of Amatraz resistance. So I treated in the spring, went through summer, and then I was testing in the fall, and things were good until I got to about October, and all of a sudden my counts just went through the roof. And I was like, oh boy, what am I supposed to do now? Because we're too late in the season to put Apivar down, and I got to control these mites. So I was kicking around the thought in the shower, and I remembered one of my neighbors had one of those great big cannons, one of those big bazookas.
The propane ones,
you call them.
Yeah.
This wasn't propane, but it was run off a generator and an air compressor. And he said, well, Ian, I'll give it to you. And if you can figure out how to use the damn thing, you just use it and bring it back to me, show me how to use it. So he sent it to me, and it took us about a day to figure it out. It was kind of a finicky damn thing. And you drop the oxalic in the top, and it tumbles down, and there's just great big iron at the bottom that then blows the oxalic acid vapor out. And it just blasted the colonies, and you have the air compressor to force air through. A real crude piece of equipment. So we went through the first time, and it didn't change my mite counts at all. So I said, damn it. So then we went through a second time, because nothing to lose, right?
Right.
And that second time I went through, it knocked all the mites down. I went from 5 to 6%, which isn't really high, but it was high for us going into winter. 5 or 6% is going to kill colonies as we put them in. And it dropped it right down to hardly, like I'd say about 0.5% of mites. So oxalic worked. And I think the reason why it didn't work the first round and worked the second round is maybe two things. Hitting him twice maybe helped knock more mites down, but is also the first time I think I had brood in the colonies. So I had a continual hatch of mites being expressed. So what I did is I left 1 yard untreated, and that 1 yard, because I wasn't sure, am I blasting this oxalic in there? I had no experience with the product before. Am I actually killing my bees? Because this stuff is harsh to breathe in. I mean, this is very
I've learned that lesson the hard way.
How can this be good for the bees? So we treated the whole apiary except for that 1 yard. Those bees come through that winter. I had about 10% loss, but my colonies were small. So I'll really obviously compromised due to the mites. And I had high deform wing virus and all that, but still alive. And I was able to salvage those colonies into units. The yard that I didn't treat was a 75% outright loss. And I struggled to keep the other 25% going. I think I lost another 12% that spring, just trying to get them back up and going. So that told me that oxalic acid worked. So then I used that vaporizer for 2 years, just borrowing it from the guy. And then I got really tired of the inconsistency of the application of the dose. So I was putting the dose in and blasting, and I wasn't really sure how much was actually getting into the colonies. And I wasn't really sure on the temperature of the burn of the product. And I didn't like that. So what I did then is I bought a ProVap, which is that little handheld thing. And what that did, it treated very well, but what it did, it was it allowed us to treat to the 2 gram or 4 gram or even 3 grams if we wanted at a time, but it still required a generator. So we're dragging this damn generator around and all these cords and kicking around and all that. So we used that for quite a number of years, and they worked. They worked just fine, and they're cheap enough, I guess. But we just got tired of it. So then this last fall, I was in my bee supplies shop, and the owner there, he's been after me to use this InstantVap, like this. And I was thinking to myself, well, it's battery operated. And I was like, how is that going to work? Because batteries running out of charge and that. So he's been after me to do it, and I figured, well, I'll give it a shot. So he actually gave me one, and then I bought another one. So I have 2 of these units going, and I bought some batteries, and I learned how to use it. And this is probably the best device I've used so far in the market. I've learned how to use the batteries, and just the quickness and the ease of use of this little thing. It's quickened up our treatment time, and I think it also provides a better burn off, like more consistent. It seems like the vapor is more consistent as it treats into the colony, more of it, and just more of a consistency of the product. So yeah, so that's kind of the evolution of my experience with oxalic, and this is the unit that I've rested on now.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So your unit you got from a Canadian dealer.
Yeah.
Is it a Celsius or Fahrenheit unit? Does it say 230 on the back or 445 when you treat?
This one is
I'm sure it will say 230, but I'm curious.
235, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so that's a Celsius unit. So one of the things, just a side note, I guess, is I get a lot of questions about why is my unit set so high down in the States, and I wanted people in the States who are familiar with Fahrenheit to be familiar with their treatment temperatures. I think it's very important that people know that treatment temperature matters when doing oxalic acid sublimation, vaporization, wherever it falls in your textbook. It has to be a precise temperature. So so just wanted to wrap that around. So just anytime that you make a video, just try and be sure to say Celsius or say it somewhere. Just something to note. It really doesn't help anyways, but it's okay.
Our language and temperature kind of merges with -40. That's the same temperature for both of us.
Oh, well, that's good. Sadly, that doesn't help us in this. So anyway, So with you holding that unit up, I did see a few accessories on it. So you've got the yellow roof,
Yeah.
the silicone insulator. You've got the pink cleaning caps. Are you cleaning every 50 colonies? How many colonies do you get before you clean?
So basically, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I think this is an insulator, but
Yep.
it was sold to me as more of a spillage catcher thing, just so it would stop making a whole lot of mess on the
Yep.
device.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I can see that, but I can also see how it's an insulator. It probably does a good job on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure what they charge me for that, but this thing here, the cleaning cap, we fill it up with the water, and we at the end of every yard before we go to the next yard, we'll punch it through, and just you
Okay.
got to make sure you hold that down because it blows out the steam. And the oxalic we use, Dancing Bee sells it too. I'm not sure who packs it, but I'm certain they put a little bit of sugar in this because
Mm-hmm.
it builds up residue here, and it's black and almost looks like burnt sugar to me. Oxalic will burn out complete. So
Yep.
whatever the medium is in this,
It's like a
got leave a little
3%
residue
binder.
behind.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
what we battle, but that's exactly why you have to clean it. Is that 3% binder? I forget if it's glycerin or what it is. There, every company
Okay.
kind of has a little bit of a mix up, but it is very similar to a burnt sugar consistency. That's a very good representation.
So we do clean it every yard because we found that if we didn't, like this, just a little blast, and she cleans out nice. But if we didn't, then that black residue would accumulate in the pipe here. Yeah, and it'd cause a backup. So we do wash it out every yard. So after 40 colonies.
Good. Which is generally what I recommend, 40 to 50 colonies. So that leads me to my next line item. When you're out at the yard, how do you guys go about your battery usage? How many, treatments are you getting a battery? And are you charging on the go? Are you running, how's that whole thing kind of look in your operation as far as battery usage and kind of making because batteries are expensive and everybody's trying to figure out kind of the best way to buy batteries or fit them into their operation with a charger or what have you. So how'd you solve that problem for your operation?
So my biggest hesitation of buying one of these things was the batteries, because I didn't want to battle the batteries, and I didn't know, do I need like 100 amps of battery here to do what I'm doing? So I invested into the product, and what I did is I bought 2 devices, and then, well, we have batteries in the shop too. So I was using those 5 amp batteries there to start, just to kind of get a feel for the unit to see what I actually needed. And I found, well, the recommendation is a 2-gram dose. I don't know if you want to talk doses or not, but I'll just say right out, I'm using a 4-gram
Go for it.
dose.
Go for it. Yep.
Yeah. And the 4-gram dose is pretty much a full applicator here. So, it's good. I'm glad they had a 4-gram max dose on here, because we just screw it up to the 4-gram, and it does a good job of making it.
Don't try and pass 4. Just don't, whatever you do, don't. The plunger will lock at like 4 3/4. So just mental note not to try and take it to 5. Anyway, continue. Just wanted to throw it in there.
Yeah. So on a 2-gram dose, I mean, the amp draw is going to be a lot different than on a 4-gram dose. So pretty much the way we measured it is if, what did I say, 1 amp for 5 colonies. So it would be, if it was a 2-gram dose, it'd be 1 amp for 10 colonies. I think I'd double my battery life. So we tested it out, and we figured it out exactly that. It took about 1 amp of battery to charge the unit, to get it warm, and then after the unit was an operational temperature, then it was just pretty much exactly the math to that is 1 amp to 5 colonies. So with 2 of these going, and 2 batteries on here, 2 5-amp batteries, we're able to do a full yard of 40. And we found that the temperature, and the nice thing about it is we don't have to watch the volts, because when the volts draw down, it turns off automatically, so then it doesn't bugger your battery up. We found it run at what did I say there? 235? 235.
Yep, 235
and the treatment,
Celsius.
the 4-gram treatment would pull it down to 200. So from 235 down to 200 through the treatment. And as soon as it started rebounding, we knew the treatment was done. So every time she'd come through with the device and she'd put it in the colony, and these nice little hooks here, they could probably be a little longer if you want criticism, but they're just enough to, like, this thing holds it in the colony nice, because I have
Mhm.
3/4 or 7/8 gap in my pallet, so it fits in there just perfectly. But because of these little clips here, it keeps the pressure off the tube, which is nice. The ProVap always, it always broke off there because I had too much pressure there. It's always hanging on the colony.
Mhm.
But these little notches held it in nice. So she'd put it into the colony like that, and then she would take her dose, click into the, we just bring this around,
Mhm.
just take it in there into the top here, 4 grams, and then go on the next 4 grams. And then by the time she moved this over to the next colony, she come back and this is pretty much done. It's pulled down, starting to rebound already. So then she just take it out, put it in the next colony.
So you run two
super fast.
side by side down your two-way pallets.
Yeah, pretty much that. Most of my yards in the fall, I start filling in the dead spots. So everything is stacked all the way down the line, and she's just basically all the way down. And if she had a third unit, I don't think it would have actually paid, because she was keeping up to 2 just so fast. It was very slick.
And that's just
And one of
her
the
without
reasons,
you doing anything. It's just her operating 2
no,
units.
no, I bugger off. I let her do that work because I'm busy other places in the farm. It's
Sure,
kind of
sure,
nice for
sure.
me, but like she's doing, she's wearing protective gear and everything like that, and everything's legit. But what was I saying? It's fast and very easy, and we're not tripping over cords. I think that's the best thing, not having to run a generator all the time. This thing's blaring at you all day, and you're pulling cords, and then you're turning the generator on and off and on and off and all the time. It's just got really annoying. So that's one of the reasons I figured maybe we could try to see if it actually worked. So after we figured out the math on that, then I went and I found a place that sold batteries at a good price. Well, I thought it was a good price because I found a better price after, but that doesn't matter. So I bought a 12 amp,
Okay, the
couple
big
12
ones.
amps, and
Yep.
bunch of 8s here. So this one was worth $450, and this one was 250. I mean, wherever you can
Is
find them on
that
sale.
Canadian or USD?
That's Canadian. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
take 73% of that. So you guys would be looking at more like 325 or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
That
the best
makes
deal.
sense.
A lot of guys on my YouTube page are criticizing, like, Christ, Ian, you paid way too much. I could get that for $150.
No, what I just
Well,
heard,
that
I'm
doesn't
just
help
like,
me
I
now.
think I'll reiterate. Yeah. So a lot of those batteries, and there's a big thing going on. A lot of those batteries, people say, "Oh, well, Amazon's got them for half the price or what have you." There's this, and they look authentic and all that. There's a big thing with knockoff batteries going on. It's part of the reason why we don't sell batteries, because the testing that I've seen in some of these tool videos and such is the knockoff batteries not only pose a literal fire hazard because some of the safety features are generally skipped in them, depending who manufactures them, but the battery cells themselves are lower tier and they're not matched cell to cell. So there's technology that's missed, meaning that a 10 amp hour battery, it was a 6 amp hour battery operates like a 2 amp hour battery, and a 2 amp hour battery won't do anything for that unit. So we've had a few people, have problems like that. And all it takes is to get the correct OEM batteries, which is a shame because, people, work hard for their money, and I hate having people buy junk,
Yeah.
because they're trying to
just
save
it.
$1 in a poor economy.
We bought
but-
these at Granger, so I can only trust that they're legit because they have Milwaukee on it. And the only reason why
you would know.
I bought Milwaukee, because that's, my brother has Milwaukee tools in the shop, so it was familiar. So I thought, why not buy familiar batteries, right? So that's the only reason why. No other reason. Just this is what we had in the farm. So after I did my math, I figured, well, we're going to be doing 6 yards a day because we don't push too hard, and it's just Carrie doing it herself. So I figured we need about 50 amps. So then I bought 50 amps worth of battery. That cost me, I figured, like, this is Canadian again, but on the big batteries here, it's about $30 an amp. So if you do the math on 50 amps, that cost me $1,500 of battery cost. So all said and done, 2 of these units, $650 each, and then 50 amp battery, it was $2,800. Now I buy 2 ProVaps for $350 a piece and then buy a generator, right? So, I don't know how much a generator is worth. So it just
Sure.
depends on how you want to spend your money and how you want to justify that money. So that was able to get us through 6 yards of 40 in a day on one charge. So then we have 4 chargers back here because we have a lot of chargers in the shop. So we just load the batteries up and then
Gotcha.
they're fresh for the next morning. It worked really well. Yeah.
Hmm.
If we wanted to do another 100 colonies in a day, then we'd just buy another 20 amps worth of batteries, and it's just that easy.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Well, I was very curious how you had solved that problem. So that is that's one way to go about it. And when you look at it, those big Canon vaporizers, the propane ones at least, I've seen price tags well above $2,000 and approaching the 3,000
Oh yeah.
USD, of course.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, for that price, you can get the batteries, 2 vaporizers, and have precise and fast treatments. Is generally
Yeah. And the
thought.
other thing is that fall I spent. Let me do some math here.
Sure.
I spent $8,500 on Apivar strips, and I just wrote a check out for it, just like that, right?
Wow.
And I mean, and then I cough and
Well,
sputter
and
and try to
1,500
make a
colonies,
decision
do
on
all 1,500 get
$2,800
one?
here. They get 2 strips. So when you account, and I get a discount. So once you account for those 2 strips, that's just in the fall. I did the same in the spring, so it's a
Wow.
big cost. And that's something I
Wow.
just, write a check. And then I hesitate to invest $2,800 into a unit that's going to last year after year after year after year, right? It's just funny how we justify things.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. That's really neat. I really didn't know that those treatments were that expensive at that scale.
Yeah.
That caught me a little
Yeah.
off guard there. Wow.
We can't
Okay.
use off-label treatments like some beekeepers do and other places because our PMRA is they're very sticky about that. And if you
What's
get
a
caught,
PMRA?
they
Is that like
that's our
inspector?
that's our pest regulatory authority, kind of like your EPA.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So if they catch you,
Interesting.
they fine you, and then they fine you more than they fine you, then they'll throw you in jail. But not only that, my packer who buys my honey, if we get caught using off-label products, they won't buy my honey, and they could even condemn
Yeah.
the product. So it's not
Wow.
worth using off-label. So that's why we have to use the Apivar, and the
Understood.
product does work, just it's expensive. And then we're using alternatives. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Um, So I've got another one. So this is where I would like you to critique the unit. I do have another unit that I've made. I don't have one sitting here. I will get one. The compact coming out. So we'll see if any of that checks the boxes that you may like or may not like. But I would like to get your thoughts. I know you said the hangers on the front, you wish they were a little longer. But feel free. The floor is yours.
Sure. I don't have a lot of criticism to this. Like, you guys run a big risk sending me a product complimentary. Like you didn't, but Mike did.
Sure.
Because I put it on, and there's a lot of people see those videos, and I can,
Mhm.
tell you all the good things about it. But if they don't see me using it the next video, then the alarm bells go off, and then
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
But if you
Yep.
see me using this product again the second time or continuously, then the product is good. And I will vouch this is a real good product. Uh, what I like about it is it's easy to handle. I mean, I won't put it on, but the battery here, it's just a nice, neat, compact unit, and the battery is situated just perfectly. So when I set it down, it almost sits itself on the ground and sticks itself into the pallet. So there's none of that hanging off the pallet or
Oh,
anything like that.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Takes a lot of pressure off the tip, and these little clips do help. So when the ground's not as level, so it sticks in there, so the battery's off the ground a little bit. But for the most part, especially these big batteries, they just sit there all nice and sexy there. So that part is perfect. To be honest, I don't use it as much as Carrie, so she could tell you all the things that she swears and curses about it. But what she tells me is, no, she's not telling me any criticisms other than when she cleans it out at the end of the yard. She put it on like this, and this thing blew off into her face one time. So you got to hold it because if that's plugged up a
Now, do
little bit,
you
the
have
back
her
pressure.
cool that down any before you clean it, or do you just from the last colony go right into rinsing it? So we
Last
instruct people
colony,
to
we just
cool
put
them
the
down.
cap on.
Okay.
Oh,
What?
okay.
Yeah. So
it almost works
that's
better when it's hot though, because you put it on and it just
right.
blows
So
it out the
the
front.
thing is we do so units down here are normally 445 Fahrenheit. So I normally tell people to flip it off, let the unit get between like 350 and 400. So not cool, but not blistering hot either. So pulling a little bit of that heat out. And then to start with a half cap is generally what we do.
Yeah.
Now there are guys who know or have done it for the first time and go, I just got to hang on to the sucker and run it hot with a full cap, and they know to hang on to it. As long as they do that with a good set of gloves, they're good. But yeah, it is a steam thing. Steam gets uncontrollable the hotter it gets. It's one of the fascinating things about steam. But yeah, so if it is building up too much pressure for her or anything like that, backing off a little bit of temperature and a little bit of water by volume in the cap does help that. That is one of the hard things with those caps because it's just how that goes.
I could see that for sure. So yeah, so that's that. The temperature starts at 235, drops to 200, rebounds quite nicely, so it's quick. She was using it in a colder day one time, so it took a little bit more amp hours to treat the colonies. So maybe it decreased it down to like 4.5 colonies per amp instead of 5, maybe even down to 4 colonies per amp hour instead of 5. But that's working on a 4-gram dose too. So I think
a
it's
wind chill
fairly
actually
well.
battles you a lot too. So it's not just really the cold air temp; it's the cold wind blowing across that stainless housing is what we find. So a cold day really will struggle, for obvious reasons because it's overcoming the cold outside. But it's when the wind's really blowing that it'll try sucking the heat out of that outside housing.
Okay, it must be insulated in there, is it? Or
it is. It is. So that's part of the reason why the yellow insulator, what I call an insulator, because to me that's its best benefit. It'll get about 20 to 30% more efficiency with that insulator as far as runtime with the bigger batteries. But the biggest thing is when people would not use the pink caps and they would dump water into the stem, it would overflow because the stem hole is bigger than, the plunger tube is bigger than the small stem. And underneath of that yellow piece, there's 4 Allen head screws and a plate. Well, that plate is not attached to the housing, and water can run in there and into the fiberglass housing that surrounds. The unit surprisingly will handle that, even though it's like a wet sponge around it. And the general rule of thumb is to have people heat the unit up, kind of boil the water out, and then let it cool, put it in the trash bag with a bag of rice to suck the moisture back out of that unit. And they're fine because the heaters are actually press fit into the aluminum. So like it doesn't do any damage. You just don't want the water to get to the other part of the housing with the electronics. But yeah, it's got fiberglass insulation around it on the inside there in the front third, the part that stays real hot, just to help kind of do some sort of windbreak there.
Yeah, with my ProVap, I ended up having to wrap it with a muffler tape around the bowl just to keep it so it recharged a lot quicker. Otherwise, we're all day for that thing trying to recharge in a cold day. We had to wrap it up. So that's exactly what's going on in this unit too, is insulated. That's why it rebounds so quick. Yeah. So the other thing, I love this applicator device. It's so quick. And it must be the medium in the oxalic because we used another product. It was from a hardware store. I'm not sure what the carrier was or the other, like this is 99.6. I'm not sure what the other little percentage was in there.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if it is actually healthy for the bees because this is either a sugar, I thought, or whatever you're talking in glycerin. I think that it seems to help with this applicator device, as you stick it in, it sticks in there real nice where the other would kind of crumble out.
So I'll give
this
you a tip
just
on that one
perfect.
because I had across the board, as you know, in the States, or you may not know, apobioxol is the only oxalic acid stateside that people are allowed to use. That being said, 80% of the people I talk to tend to not, they look at that label like this. It is what it is. We just sell the applicators and the legal thing. The reality is apobioxol specifically, sorry, my dog's talking, comes very dry. It just, that's how it is. It's like a dry, solid brick. So people take the plunger and stick it in, and they're like, you know, and I'll get a call every once in a while, like, Robert, I don't know what's going on. What happens is for them to get their calculation and to store it properly, they suck 100% of the moisture out of it. So oxalic acid, if you leave it set open or it's older acid, will wick moisture from the air into it over time. Not a lot, depending on your environment and that kind of thing. But basically, what we have people do is in like the 350-gram bag, they'll put about a half a teaspoon of water into it, double it over, shake it real good. If they're having issues with it, do stick the plunger in, see if it holds better. I always tell people less is more. You're not trying to make a snowball or anything like that. But you'd be amazed how that actually helps. So it very well could be a thing of, it wasn't a matter of this binder or glycerin percentage. It was just a matter of that one. The shape of the crystals were different and it needed a little bit more moisture to pack correctly. Just makes a lot of sense. Based on what I've seen, just something to think about. Now in containers like that, it's very hard because I have some guys call me up that they buy, you know, a 20-pound bag of Florida Labs, for example, and they're like, Rob, it's not sticking. And the advisement then is you need to get some sort of smaller bag or something like that to be able to add moisture to, where you're not going to oversaturate the top and nothing will touch the bottom of your container. So again, that's hard. It's really not a thing that I would recommend somebody leave open outside, you know, with things could get into it and that kind of thing. But if you do have that issue with the plunger not seeming like it's taking a good dose, it just needs a little moisture into the bag. I would also make the assumption that you've found some way to lubricate the plunger itself, or have you not had that issue so far? With the, as far as the gasket.
Yeah, it seems, no. What do you mean? Like sticking it into the...
Yeah, so when you stick it in, there's some that it'll build up some OA on it over time. So if you're not particularly good with rinsing the plunger off and that kind of thing, it'll build up OA residue on it. And then when you stick it in, it'll start to wear away at that O-ring. I get that question a lot. That is a wear part. That's why two come in the box. At least in the States, I put 2 extra washers in every box. I haven't had anybody say, hey, Rob, I had to swap that out. But it is a potential that I see in some of the units come back a little snug. That should just kind of drop in there and stay in place. Weirdly enough, the only thing that I've found that I really trust in this scenario, now everybody kind of puts something different here because we don't have a, you know, InstantVap lubricant, yada, yada specific, is a drop of motor oil. And it sounds crazy, but the reality is if you do a drop, really a drop or less, you really just want to be able to lubricate inside of that O-ring, which it's really good at doing. But the highlight of motor oil is that it doesn't change viscosity when it's heated. So you don't have to worry about, like, if you put cooking oil on it or, you know, a grease that you use on your extractor, you know, you're worried then about that grease getting light and running. Motor oil is designed to run at that high temperature and all that. So just something to keep an eye on from a maintenance perspective. You know, that kind of thing. Again, if you're basically, you'll know if you really got to hit that thing to get it to go down in, you got to lubricate it or clean it in some capacity. But if you rinse it every once in a while, you should be fine. It really is just, if it kind of gets neglected, it's, you know, kind of par for the course.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that. I don't think she's had any trouble. So that seems to go in nice. The one thing I had trouble, not is either this device or the other one, was the battery. I think these must be 3D printed, eh?
They are.
Yeah. One of them is too loose. So then I put a credit card in there just to hold the battery tight. Otherwise it goes on and off, because it kind of flickers. But so it has a connection problem. Yeah, I mean, that's just a
That
very minor thing,
is
which we fixed with the credit
right,
card.
but you shouldn't have to. That's a warranty thing. So
Oh,
if this was you and I on a different phone call, and if you were in the States, this would be getting sent back to me to put a new connector on it. Especially
okay.
if you can put different batteries into it and that kind of thing. So definitely reach out to your rep and get that fixed. I believe
Well,
that
I
they
don't know.
get
I'm
sent
not that.
parts
It
and all
still
that.
works.
I know,
My credit
but
card works
that's
just fine.
right. But and I can appreciate that, and I can appreciate all that, but it shouldn't do that. And when I
Yeah.
find one that's been maybe printed a little weird or what have you, it gets switched. The reason why they're 3D printed is the cost of injection molds is astronomical. They
I
are
imagine.
extremely expensive for the mold. And if something needs to be tweaked just a little bit, you get to restart the whole mold process all over again at 30, 40, 50,000 a mold to make, not hundreds of thousands of battery connectors. It's very expensive price per. And when we can 3D print them and then just keep refining it to make it stronger and stronger, that it's just more practical that way, especially because it's not just DeWalt or Milwaukee. We have 5, I think overseas they have 7 or 8 connectors at this point. So yeah, so anyway, that's 100% up to you. Obviously the units are under warranty. You should get that looked at when you're not using it. That's a simple send it in and have them service it. That kind of stands
Yeah, I'm
across
not
the
going to be
board.
too hard to deal with just because I was provided one complimentary. So it's working just fine for me.
I get it. I get it. But I get really picky about things working correctly, exactly how we send them out as the
Yeah.
condition that I want them to be in for consumers. So anyway, so I have one last question for you in our
Sure.
kind of dialogue here. So what are some tips that you would give a fellow operation of your size who's looking into using oxalic acid in their hive that you may not have already mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the strategy is. For our beekeeping environment, we run into a naturally broodless period, leaving October into November. As we go into this terrible winter of ours, our colonies prepare for it, and they pretty much render themselves absolutely broodless. And right at that point of time is when we can target these mites the most effectively, because all those little bastards are just they're exposed and they can be killed. So that's the time to do it. I know there's beekeepers, and I reach a lot of beekeepers in different climates where there is brood most of the year, even in the fall into winter. A lot of colonies basically go broodless, but there's still colonies with brood, and it's those little patches of brood that cause us so much trouble when we're trying to treat with oxalic acid. So if the beekeeper knows that they're going completely broodless, 1 treatment, 2 treatments, that might just be enough. And that's what I find. I find that 2 treatments pretty much is good for me. But for the guys that find that they have more brood just lingering on, or trying to treat their colonies with brood within their colonies, then I would suggest to for sure do a 3-round treatment, if not 4 or 5, at the recommended dose. But just to try to get more product in there more often to be able to target more mites, because eventually those mites will migrate from under the cappings and out, and kill them before they get back underneath the cappings. So it might involve a little bit more effort, but just to be consistent with that. And I find talking to guys who treat more than 3 times into 4, or maybe even 5 times, who have brood, they seem to be able to knock those counts down. So that's good. That's productive. That's about the only thing I would say about oxalic is you need to pay attention to the amount of brood within your colonies.
I agree tremendously. That's I have a lot of these kind of dialogues with people from all across the country with all different climates, and generally it's a treatment or 2 during the winter time, scaled up to if you're trying to use this as your only treatment, which I really don't recommend. You can do it in certain scenarios if you're really not in a horrible spot mid-year, and then trying to triage. If you really start on a good plan and you're monitoring levels and really just trying to keep things pulled back until you get into fall and do a good treatment, you surely can. But paired with things like Formic Pro, that kind of thing, really works out well, just to save legwork. But there is other cost involved. Those treatments are expensive, and some climates don't allow them. It gets too hot, you can't put Formic Pro on it. It doesn't have those requirements. It's just kind of the nature of the beast there.
Yeah,
sure.
I had a actually, it's the beekeeper that I collaborate with, making these protein supplements for the bees. Andrew Munn. He tells me, he says, Ian, like, he's watching me treat my colonies. He said, I appreciate what you're doing because you're large scale. But he said, if you put just a little bit more time, he said, you'll get more consistency in your treatments. And what he argues is, when I treat my colonies, he suggests I seal off the fronts completely and leave the front sealed for, he talks up to 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh boy, that sure adds a lot of time. But he claims, like, when I'm treating, I'm blasting this into the colony, and my boxes are all full of holes and cracks. And he says, you're using 4 grams, and you're using 4 grams more than 3 because you're probably wanting to make up for all the lost gases that escape. But he said, you got to close up the entrance, because when you blast it in, the bees are just pushing it all out the front. So you want to hold it into the chamber as long as you possibly can to be able to, keep it on the bees. And he said that's the only criticism he'd give me for what he sees I do with my operation. I still don't close off their entrances. We do have entrance reducers, so they have a space like that, but we're treating 1,500 colonies in a round, so we're just we just to put it through, and it seems like we're getting enough coverage that we seem to be knocking enough mites down that we're not seeing a lot of issue into the spring. Right. So that's all I want to say on that.
So I think that's a very valid statement. That is another question that I do get quite a bit. The reality is that I run Avame boxes. It's kind of the same scenario as an entrance reducer. There's really not a lot of breeze that gets into the bottom of those boxes to be able to blow that out at a rate that I would be like, okay, I'm not getting a good treatment. Now, is there a difference between, and I also in my own bee yard tend to treat a little heavier than normal, but the reality is I don't know that me spending that extra effort to make sure every single nook and cranny on everything is sealed is really that. My dog is talking a lot. Sorry. Is really that she came in and now was the time to whine. But the reality ends up being that I just don't know, unless it's a really windy day, that it's really worth it. Now, is there an argument to be made that, if you're running at the legal dose, which is the recommended dose for your area, blocking it off ensures that you get 100% of that treatment in. And, on a somewhat breezy day without entrance reducers, of course, if you're shooting 3 or 4 grams, and if you're shooting more than the recommended, breezy day, maybe you are only getting the recommended. So, maybe there is something to be said there. Now, the other piece is the time. So maybe shooting a little heavy-handed and keeping it moving saves you time, and you're getting about the same dosage as the legal anyway. I don't know. I think there is a lot of discussion there. But my rule of thumb that I kind of preach to people when we have these dialogues is, as long as it's not a super windy day. One more question I have for you is your pallets. Do you have a landing board on your pallets, or are they a straight down? Because you mentioned that you have your entrance reducers, and I have a lot of people who have some issues with pallets, with landing boards, and some run 3/8 inch openings. And if they have a landing board and a 3/8 inch opening, the stem won't quite get into it without leaning forward. So if you can just kind of briefly describe how your pallets are and how, just so people get an idea of how the unit works with your hives.
The landing board, it varies between when I built the pallets and now I'm getting guys to build the pallets for me. So when I first building them, we had at least 2.5 inches of landing board. So the unit would fit. It actually sits down really nice, and this would stick into the entrance. I have 3/4 to 7/8 of an entrance, and my entrance reducers are the same size, and they're typically flush with the box. So I'm not running into any issues with this sticking out or what. So when this is treating a colony, it's pretty much right flush, and there is no opening along. So basically, I am closing off the entrance.
Yeah, and that's what I was sitting there thinking. I'm like, it's got a flat end pushed up against it. So, even if you have those entrance reducers on, then you're in pretty good shape. And the reality is bee boxes will never be 100% sealed. I don't care who cuts them, who, whatever, you're always going to, and that OA will show you where your boxes leak. It's just,
yeah, I have pretty faulty boxes. And then my newer boxes are only an inch, maybe, I think they're an inch or maybe an inch and a half out to measure it. So it still sits down nice and pretty, but it not as much of a ledge. No issue whatsoever.
Okay, great. But like I said, was just curious. I do appreciate the info. I'm going to start kind of wrapping us up. I do really appreciate the efforts here this evening, going through my barrage of questions here to try and
no problem.
Provide some aid to the next kind of generation, or people just looking to expand or research new stuff as far as oxalic acid goes. So I do appreciate that. And I will see you at the North America Honeybee Expo here in just a few weeks. So
yeah, actually, no, I'm not going this year. I'll be maybe going the following year, but not this year.
Oh no.
Yeah, not this year. But I hear there's going to be a heck of a turnout, so that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yep.
And you can tell all your customers coming around the booth that. Or you got me?
Yep, I got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, you can tell your customers coming around the booth that I do approve this product. It is. I do vouch for it. That's why I'm on here with you, because it's a good unit, and I like to promote good things, and this is a good unit. So there you go.
I appreciate that, man. I was really looking forward to seeing you. So I am glad that we got to have this chat, because I really do like our dialogues we have, even though we both are very busy in different directions at that show every year.
Yeah.
So
I told Cayman that I'm not a Bob Binney. I'm not a year after year after year speaker. I have limited shelf life. So he's got to spread me out over, because he's going to have this thing going for quite a while. So I said, pull me back in a few years. And yeah, sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, though. I'm going to miss it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to miss having you there. But that's how it goes. So anyway, thank you again. I really do appreciate it. And I will catch you in the next one.
Okay. Yeah. See you around, Rob.
See ya. Thanks.